Learning English can sometimes feel like a challenge, especially when you're just starting. One of the biggest hurdles people face when learning a new language is the habit of translating everything in their heads. This is something many English learners struggle with, and it's a reason why speaking or understanding English can sometimes feel slow or awkward. Let's imagine this. You're having a conversation in English, but instead of just speaking naturally, your brain is working hard to translate everything from your native language into English. You might feel like you are getting stuck in your head, unsure of how to say things in the right order or the right way. This is very common. The problem with this is that translating in your mind takes time. And by the time you figure out the right translation, the conversation has already moved on, and you might feel like you're not keeping up. It can also cause mistakes or awkward pauses when you're trying to speak. So, how can we fix this? The answer is simple. Think directly in English. When you start thinking in English, you don't have to waste time translating. Your thoughts will come in English, and you will be able to speak and understand faster and more easily. This doesn't mean you need to know all the words in English or that you need perfect grammar right away. What it does mean is that you start to connect the things around you with their English names and meanings without going through your native language first. This is where the power of thinking in English comes in. When you can think in English, you begin to feel more comfortable using the language. You won't have to stop and think about every word before you say it. You also start to feel more confident when speaking because your brain is already prepared to think and react in English, not another language. Let's consider Sam, for example. Sam is a young student who is learning English. In the beginning, Sam faced a big challenge. Every time he tried to speak, he found himself stuck because he was translating in his head. Sam would think in his native language first, and then try to change it into English, which took a lot of time. This made it hard for him to keep up in conversations or to speak fluently. But one day, Sam decided he would try something different. He wanted to learn how to think directly in English. It wasn't going to be easy, but he knew it was the key to improving his English. At first, it was difficult, but Sam started with small steps. He began to name simple things around him in English, like table, chair, and book. This helped him get used to hearing and thinking in English. The more he practiced this, the more natural it started to feel. The next step for Sam was to think about what he was doing. Instead of thinking in his native language and then translating, he tried to say things like "I'm eating lunch" or "I'm walking to the store" in his head. This helped him connect English words to the actions he was doing. It wasn't long before Sam started describing his surroundings in English. He would look around and think, "The walls are white," or "There is a lamp on the table." This simple act of describing things around him helped him build vocabulary and reinforced his ability to think in English. It was starting to feel more natural. Every time Sam practiced, he felt more comfortable and confident. Sam's breakthrough came when he started to talk to himself in English. At first, this felt strange to him, but he soon realized that it was one of the best ways to practice thinking in English. He began asking himself simple questions like, "What should I have for lunch today?" or "What time is it?" By doing this, he got used to hearing his own thoughts in English, and it helped him become more fluent. The next big step for Sam was imagining conversations in English. He thought about real-life situations where he might need to use English, such as ordering food at a restaurant or asking for directions in a new city. He imagined himself speaking to someone and practicing his answers in English. This helped him get ready for when he actually had to speak. It was like rehearsing for a play. By imagining these conversations in his mind, he felt less nervous when it came time to speak to real people. Through all of this, Sam realized that learning to think in English didn't happen overnight. It took time and practice, but with each small step, he was able to speak more confidently. He no longer had to translate in his head. He began to think in English, and the words flowed much more naturally. Sam's journey shows us that thinking in English is possible for anyone. It just takes some practice and patience. In the beginning, it might feel slow or even frustrating. You might struggle to think in English, and it can be hard to not rely on your native language. But this is completely normal, and it's a part of the process. Every time you practice thinking in English, you get one step closer to fluency, so don't worry if it takes time. Just keep practicing, and soon you'll find that English will feel like second nature. To sum it up, the power of thinking in English is that it helps you speak faster, understand better, and feel more confident. It may seem difficult at first, but if you take small steps, just like Sam did, you will see big improvements over time. It's all about practice, patience, and keeping a positive attitude. The more you practice, the easier it will get, and you'll soon be thinking and speaking in English without even realizing it. When you begin learning a new language, one of the first challenges is to start thinking in that language. This can be difficult at first, especially when your brain is used to thinking in your native language. But don't worry, learning to think in English is a gradual process. The key is to start with small steps, and over time, you'll find that it becomes easier and more natural. The first step to thinking in English is to start with simple vocabulary. Look around your room or wherever you are right now. What do you see? A table, a chair, a phone, or a book? These are simple objects, and you probably already know their names in your native language. But the goal is to start thinking of these objects in English, not in your own language. For example, instead of thinking ban or sto depending on your native language, think table. This simple act of naming things in English helps your brain start to connect the objects you see to their English words. At first, it may seem strange or difficult, but don't worry. As you continue to practice, it will become easier. If you don't know the word for something, that's okay. You can look it up in a dictionary or use a translation app. Write the word down and practice saying it in your mind. Over time, you'll build a strong connection between the things you see and their English names. Once you are comfortable with basic objects, you can move on to actions. This step is all about thinking about what you are doing. For example, if you are sitting, instead of thinking in your native language, try thinking, I am sitting. If you are eating, think I am eating lunch or I am drinking water. By focusing on your actions, you start to link verbs and actions to their English words. This step is very helpful because it helps you connect actions with language and makes it easier to speak about what's happening in real time. This might feel a little strange at first, but it is a very effective way to practice thinking in English. You can do this for anything you do throughout the day. For instance, when you wake up in the morning, instead of thinking about the actions in your native language, think in English, I'm waking up, I'm brushing my teeth, or I'm getting dressed. These are simple sentences that will help you become comfortable with using English in everyday situations. The next step is to describe your surroundings. This is another important part of thinking in English. Take a moment to look around you. What do you see? Is there a chair in the room? Is the room bright or dark? You can start by describing what you see in simple English. For example, you might think, the walls are white, or there is a lamp on the table. Describing your surroundings helps you build your vocabulary and think in English naturally. The more you practice describing things around you, the easier it will be to think in English without translating from your native language. It's okay if you don't know every word at first. When you learn a new word, try to remember it and use it as much as you can. For example, if you didn't know the word for lamp, now you do. Keep practicing, and soon you will be able to describe everything around you in English without needing to think too hard about it. Another useful method is to talk to yourself in English. This might feel a bit strange at first, but it is an excellent way to practice thinking in English. You don't need to say things out loud if that feels uncomfortable. You can say things in your mind, like, what should I do today? Or what do I want to eat for lunch? Asking yourself questions and answering them in English is a great way to practice. You can even ask yourself simple things, like, what time is it? Or how do I feel today? This will help your mind get used to thinking in English. Talking to yourself in English allows you to practice forming sentences and using new words. It is a simple and effective way to keep improving without needing anyone else to practice with. And if you make a mistake, that's okay. Mistakes are part of the learning process, and they help you get better. Lastly, it's helpful to imagine conversations in English. This may sound unusual, but it's a great way to train your brain to think in English. Imagine a situation where you might need to speak English, such as ordering food in a restaurant or asking for directions. Picture yourself speaking to someone, and think about how the conversation might go. For example, if you are imagining ordering coffee, you might think, "Can I have a coffee, please?" Or "How much does this cost?" Practicing these simple sentences in your mind helps you get ready for real-life situations. It also reduces anxiety because, when the time comes to speak, you already have an idea of what to say. You can start with easy, everyday situations, like asking someone where the bathroom is or ordering a snack at the store. As you get better, you can imagine more complex conversations. The more you practice, the easier it will be to speak naturally when you are in real conversations. Remember, the key is to take it one small step at a time. Learning to think in English is not something that happens overnight, and it doesn't need to be rushed. Start by practicing the simple things, like naming objects around you and thinking about your daily actions. As you build confidence with these small steps, you will start to notice that thinking in English becomes easier. Keep practicing every day, and soon enough, you'll be thinking and speaking in English without having to translate in your head. By starting with these small steps, you will gradually train your mind to think in English. It will take time and patience, but with consistent practice, you'll find that your English improves and becomes more natural every day. Keep going, and remember, every small step brings you closer to fluency. Learning to think in English is not always an easy journey. It takes time, patience, and practice. While the first steps are important, the real challenge comes when you start to face obstacles. It's completely normal to feel frustrated or stuck, especially when you are trying to use a language that's not your first. However, it's important to keep going, even when things feel difficult. Overcoming obstacles is a part of the process, and every time you push through, you get closer to your goal of thinking and speaking in English more naturally. One of the first obstacles people face when learning to think in English is the feeling of frustration. In the beginning, it may feel like you're not making much progress. You might forget words, struggle to form sentences, or feel like the words just aren't coming out as easily as you want them to. This is very common and happens to every language learner. The key here is to be patient with yourself. Remember, learning any new skill takes time, and learning a language is no different. When you start to feel frustrated, it's important to step back and take a deep breath. It's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to feel stuck sometimes. The important thing is not to give up. Every mistake is an opportunity to learn something new, and every time you push through frustration, you become better at thinking in English. Don't focus too much on the fact that you're struggling, but rather celebrate the small victories. For example, if you manage to describe something in English, even if it wasn't perfect, that's progress. Another obstacle that many learners face is the fear of making mistakes. It's normal to worry about saying something wrong, especially when speaking in a language that is not your native one. This fear can make you hesitate to speak, which only makes it harder to practice. The truth is, everyone makes mistakes when they are learning. Even native speakers make mistakes. What's important is that you don't let those mistakes stop you. Each time you make a mistake, you learn something that helps you improve. For example, if you say something wrong, don't be afraid to correct yourself. Think about how you can say it better next time. Making mistakes is a natural part of the process, and it's one of the best ways to improve. When Sam first started speaking in English, he was afraid to make mistakes. But he soon realized that making mistakes was okay. He learned to laugh at his mistakes and see them as opportunities to grow. Instead of feeling embarrassed, he saw them as a way to get closer to fluency. The more he practiced, the less afraid he became of making mistakes. Another challenge that comes with learning to think in English is the feeling of impatience. You may want to speak English perfectly right away, but it takes time to get there. The path to fluency isn't always straight. There will be moments when you feel like you're not improving as fast as you would like. During these times, it's important to remind yourself that learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. There is no rush. It's okay if you don't speak perfectly today. What matters is that you keep practicing. If you ever feel impatient or discouraged, take a moment to look back at how far you've come. Think about where you started and how much you've learned. Maybe just a few weeks ago, you couldn't say a sentence in English, and now you can talk about your daily routine. Celebrate that progress. It's easy to focus on what you haven't learned yet, but don't forget to celebrate what you have accomplished. Small steps lead to big changes, and every bit of progress matters. One way to keep moving forward, even when you feel frustrated, is to use positive reinforcement. This means giving yourself credit for the things you do well. Instead of focusing on what you didn't get right, focus on what you did get right. For example, if you made a sentence in English, even if it wasn't perfect, that's a huge step forward. Give yourself a pat on the back. This mindset will help you stay motivated and positive, even during tough times. Another obstacle you may face is the fear of speaking in front of others. It's common to feel nervous when you have to speak in English with other people. The fear of being judged or making mistakes can hold you back. But the best way to overcome this fear is to practice. Start by speaking English in safe environments, like at home or with a friend. Gradually, try to speak in English more often, even if it's just small conversations with others. Over time, you'll become more comfortable and confident. The more you practice speaking in English, the easier it will become. You'll notice that the words come more quickly, and you won't have to think as much about what to say. Sam, for example, had to practice speaking in English every day to get better. He started with simple phrases and worked his way up. At first, he felt nervous speaking with others, but after a while, it became second nature. He learned that speaking often was the best way to improve. In addition to speaking, you also need to listen to English every day. Listening is just as important as speaking when learning to think in English. The more you hear English, the more you'll understand how sentences are structured and how words are used in different situations. You don't need to understand everything you hear right away. Just try to listen every day, even if it's for a short period of time. This will help train your brain to think in English, just like listening to a new song over and over again helps you learn the lyrics. Another great way to improve your English is to immerse yourself in it as much as possible. Change the language settings on your phone or computer to English, watch English TV shows or movies, and listen to English podcasts or songs. Even if you don't understand everything at first, this exposure will help you get used to hearing the language. Over time, you'll start picking up new words and phrases, and it will be easier to think in English without translating. In conclusion, overcoming obstacles when learning to think in English is part of the process. It's normal to feel frustrated, scared, or impatient at times. But the key is to keep practicing and stay positive. Every mistake is a chance to learn, and every step forward brings you closer to fluency. Keep pushing through, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. With time, patience, and practice, thinking and speaking in English will become easier and more natural. Once you have started thinking in English and have overcome some of the challenges along the way, the next step is to make this thinking a natural part of your daily life. At this point, you're ready to move from just practicing basic vocabulary and simple sentences to actually using English in real-life situations. This is when your learning journey starts to feel more exciting because you can see the progress you've made. To truly master thinking in English, it's important to use English in your daily activities. This means that instead of just thinking in English when you're practicing or studying, you begin to think in English while you go about your day. For example, when you're making breakfast, think to yourself, "I'm making eggs," or "I'm cutting vegetables." When you're walking to school or work, you might think, "I'm walking down the street," or "It's a beautiful day." The more you do this, the more natural it becomes to think in English. This step is important because it connects the language with your everyday life. It helps you use English in a way that doesn't feel forced or difficult. When you start using English while doing simple tasks, it becomes part of your routine, and you won't have to think so hard about what you're saying. Over time, your brain will start to automatically think in English without you even realizing it. It's also helpful to practice English in real-life situations. This can feel a little intimidating at first, especially if you're not yet comfortable speaking English with others. But practicing with people in real situations is one of the best ways to improve. For example, next time you go to the store, try asking the cashier, "How much does this cost?" Or "Where is the bread section?" You don't have to worry about being perfect. The goal is just to practice speaking and get used to using English in everyday conversations. One thing that makes real-life practice so helpful is that it forces you to think on your feet. In a classroom setting, you can often stop and think about what you want to say. But when you're speaking with someone in a store or at a coffee shop, you don't have the time to translate everything in your head. You have to respond quickly, and that helps you build your fluency. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to speak without pausing or thinking too much about what you want to say. Using English in different situations is also important for expanding your vocabulary. For example, if you're traveling, you might need to ask for directions or order food in a restaurant. These are situations where you will use specific vocabulary and phrases. To prepare for these moments, try imagining different conversations in your head. Think about what you might say when you're ordering food. "Can I have the soup of the day?" Or "What time does the bus leave?" The more you imagine these situations, the easier it will be to speak in those moments when they actually happen. As you get more comfortable with using English, it's important to keep practicing every day. Consistency is key to making sure your skills keep improving. Even if it's just for 10 minutes a day, make sure you use English every day. This could mean reading an article in English, listening to an English song, or having a short conversation with a friend. The goal is to stay connected to the language regularly. By practicing every day, you build your language skills, and thinking in English becomes second nature. Building confidence is another big part of mastery. You've already made great progress by thinking in English, but the next step is to feel confident when you speak. Confidence in speaking comes from practice. The more you speak, the more comfortable you become. Sam, for example, used to feel nervous about speaking with people in English. But after practicing daily and pushing himself to speak in real-life situations, his confidence grew. He no longer worried about making mistakes. Instead, he focused on communicating and getting his message across. This shift in mindset helped him become a more confident speaker. In addition to practicing speaking, listening to English is just as important. The more you listen, the more you'll understand how native speakers use the language. Listening also helps you get used to the natural flow of English, like how sentences are connected and how intonation works. Watching English movies or listening to podcasts is a great way to get used to hearing English in a relaxed, natural way. You don't have to understand every word. The more you listen, the better you'll get at understanding the language as a whole. Using English in your social life is another great way to improve. If you have friends or family who speak English, try speaking to them in English as much as you can. If you don't know anyone who speaks English, there are many online communities where you can practice. There are websites and apps where you can find language partners to practice speaking with. Even if it's just a short conversation, these interactions will help you improve your ability to think and speak in English. Reading and writing in English are also essential parts of the learning process. Reading helps you expand your vocabulary and understand how words and sentences are used in context. Writing gives you the opportunity to practice thinking in English by forming sentences and organizing your ideas. You can start by writing a simple journal entry or a short paragraph about your day. Don't worry about making it perfect. The key is to practice and keep improving. As you continue on your journey to mastering thinking in English, remember that patience and persistence are your best friends. It's easy to get frustrated when things don't come quickly, but language learning is a slow and steady process. If you keep practicing every day, even if it's just for a few minutes, you'll start to see results. The more you expose yourself to English, whether through reading, writing, listening, or speaking, the better you'll become. Finally, remember that every small step counts. Every new word you learn, every sentence you practice, and every conversation you have brings you closer to your goal. Thinking in English won't happen overnight, but with time, effort, and consistency, you'll find that speaking and thinking in English becomes a natural part of your life. Keep going, and soon, you'll be able to use English easily and confidently in all areas of your life. Learning to think in English is an exciting and rewarding journey. At the beginning, it might feel a bit challenging, and there may be moments when you feel frustrated or unsure. But as you move forward, you'll begin to see progress. The process of thinking in English starts with small steps, and each step builds upon the last. With patience and practice, thinking and speaking in English will become easier and more natural. The first important step is to start with simple vocabulary. This means looking around and naming the things you see in English. The more you practice naming objects, the easier it will be to remember words and connect them to things around you. Once you feel comfortable with basic objects, you can move on to thinking about actions. By thinking about what you are doing in English, you start to make the language a part of your daily routine. For example, when you're walking, think I'm walking, or when you're eating, think I'm eating. This helps your brain connect actions to words in English, making it easier to speak without thinking about it too much. Next, describing your surroundings is an important step. This means looking around and thinking about things in English. For example, if you are sitting in a room, think to yourself, the walls are white, or there is a chair near the window. By describing your surroundings, you help your brain get used to thinking in English. It also helps you expand your vocabulary by learning new words to describe different things. Talking to yourself in English is another helpful way to practice. You can ask yourself simple questions, such as, what should I do today? Or how do I feel today? This allows you to practice speaking in your mind, and over time, you will become more comfortable with English. It is a great way to keep your thoughts in English, even when you are not talking to someone else. One of the best ways to improve is to imagine conversations in English. Think about real-life situations, like ordering food at a restaurant or asking for directions. Picture yourself speaking in English and practicing the words you would use. This helps you get ready for real conversations, and it builds your confidence in using English in everyday situations. After practicing these basic steps, you will start to feel more comfortable and confident. But like any skill, learning to think in English takes time, and there will be obstacles along the way. Sometimes, you might feel frustrated because you don't see quick results, or you may feel afraid of making mistakes. It is important to remember that making mistakes is a part of learning. Don't be afraid to make them. Every mistake is an opportunity to learn and improve. When you make a mistake, don't worry about it. Instead, think about how you can correct it next time. Another obstacle many learners face is impatience. We all want to see fast progress, but learning a language is a slow process. Sometimes, it can feel like you are not improving as quickly as you would like. During these times, it's important to be patient with yourself. Think about the progress you've already made, even if it's small. Each time you practice, you get closer to your goal. The key is to keep going, even when it feels hard. As you continue practicing, remember that consistency is key. The more you practice every day, the more natural thinking in English will become. You don't need to study for hours each day, but even spending a few minutes a day practicing can make a big difference over time. Whether it's naming objects around you, describing your actions, imagining conversations, or listening to English, each little step adds up. Another important part of learning English is using the language in real situations. The more you practice speaking, listening, and reading in real-life situations, the more comfortable you'll become. Whether it's ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, or speaking with a friend, these real conversations help you build fluency and confidence. Don't be afraid to make mistakes when speaking. The more you practice in real situations, the more you'll learn and improve. In conclusion, thinking in English is a powerful skill that will help you speak faster, understand better, and feel more confident. It takes time and practice, but by starting with small steps, overcoming obstacles, and staying consistent, you can make thinking in English a natural part of your life. Don't worry about being perfect. The goal is not to speak flawlessly, but to keep improving each day. With patience, practice, and persistence, you will reach your goal of thinking and speaking confidently in English. Keep going, and remember that every small step forward brings you closer to fluency. The journey might be long, but it's a journey worth taking.